12 years after Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared over the southern Indian Ocean, the search is back on. New analysis has narrowed the likely crash zone, raising the possibility that this could be the last attempt to uncover what happened. The special sea exploration company Ocean Infinity officially restarted the search for MH370 in late December 2025. This isn't a wide check-everything plan like the ones from before. It is specifically aimed at a certain spot on the seafloor. After years of research and data analysis, the mission focuses on a newly discovered area in the southern Indian Ocean. The company's main ship, the Armada 8605, reached the search spot in early January 2026, loaded with underwater drones. And what makes this new search really special is the no-find, no-fee deal made with the Malaysian government. Under this agreement, the government will only pay a fee of up to $70 million if the company actually finds the wreckage or the flight recorders. This shows Ocean Infinity's belief in the new data. Using the calmer weather of the southern summer months, the team plans to revisit sections of the area that were previously missed or deemed too difficult to search. On the night of March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 moved onto the runway at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bound for Beijing. On board were 227 passengers from 14 different countries, along with a crew of 12. For the first 40 minutes of the flight, everything was completely normal. The airplane climbed to its normal flying height of 35,000 feet. Communications with air traffic control were normal. At 1:19 a.m., as the plane was about to leave Malaysian airspace and enter Vietnamese control, the last words from the cockpit were uttered: "Good night, Malaysia 370." And then the plane made a sudden turn. Seconds after that last radio message, the plane's transponder was turned off on purpose. The airplane disappeared from the screens of air traffic controllers. However, military radar told a much more sinister story. Instead of going toward Beijing, the plane made a sharp, quick left turn. It flew back across the Malay Peninsula, went around the tip of Sumatra, and headed northwest toward the Andaman Sea. It finally disappeared from military radar range at 2:22 a.m., far over the ocean with no radar and no radio contact. The world thought the plane was gone, but hidden signals left a trail across the sea. A small satellite data unit on the airplane kept working. For the next 6 hours, it automatically sent handshakes or pings to a satellite circling over the Indian Ocean. By studying the time it took for those signals to travel, scientists figured out that the plane had turned south and flown thousands of miles. The data showed the flight ended when the plane ran out of fuel and fell into the water near a curved line on the map called the 7th Arc. Over the years, ideas have ranged from a catastrophic failure to a ghost flight where the crew and passengers passed out from a sudden loss of oxygen. Some investigators have pointed to the captain, noting that a home flight simulator he owned had a deleted flight path that ended in the southern Indian Ocean. Yet without the wreckage, none of these ideas could be proven. The official 2018 report said the plane was turned on purpose, but investigators admitted they simply didn't know who did it or why it happened. In the years after the disappearance, pieces of the crash started to show up on faraway beaches. For an aircraft of this size, investigators expected hundreds of fragments. Instead, fewer than 30 pieces have ever been confirmed. The small number tells investigators something unsettling. Most of the plane didn't break apart at the surface. The first major piece was found in July 2015 on the shores of Reunion Island, a French area near Madagascar. It was a flaperon, a part of the wing used to control the plane's roll and lift. A special number inside of the piece proved that without a doubt, it came from MH370. This find was the first real proof that the plane ended up in the Indian Ocean. After this, other pieces started washing up in Mozambique, South Africa, Tanzania, and Madagascar. These included parts of the engine cover, a horizontal stabilizer, and pieces from inside of the cabin, like a closet door and parts of a seat. The Indian Ocean's currents play a critical role in interpreting the debris. Unlike the Atlantic or the Pacific, currents here are shaped by seasonal winds that change direction throughout the year. In the southern Indian Ocean, cold sub-Antarctic waters move eastward, while warmer surface currents gradually curve north toward Africa. This means that debris doesn't travel in straight lines. A fragment can spend months trapped in slow-moving tides before suddenly entering faster currents that carry it thousands of miles. Even small differences in where the plane entered the water could drastically change where the debris eventually washed ashore. By modeling these shifted currents backward, researchers can narrow down where the wreckage most likely lies, reinforcing the focus on a specific stretch of the 7th Arc. And these pieces are more than just junk metal. Scientists studied the types of barnacles growing on the flaperon, and they were able to tell the temperature of the water the pieces had floated through. This natural diary showed that the pieces had spent a long time in the colder deep waters of the southern Indian Ocean before drifting to the warmer currents that carried them to Africa. The condition of the pieces also gives hints. The lack of fire damage or chemical marks suggests there was no explosion in the air. Also, the way the flaperon was torn from the wing suggests it was not in the open position used for landing, which could mean the plane hit the water in a fast dive instead of a smooth landing. Every piece found confirms that the crash site is somewhere along the 7th arc, giving the base for the current search. But everything we've just covered leads to a bigger problem. For years, investigators searched and they found nothing. Between 2014 and 2018, more than $150 million was spent on the search for MH370, making it the most expensive ever. Despite all this work, nothing was found. This failure wasn't because of little effort, but because of the huge size and the tough conditions of the search area. Huge underwater mountains meant the search was extremely difficult. The southern Indian Ocean is one of the most far away and harsh places on the Earth. The search area sits right in the Roaring Forties, a zone famous for steady, strong winds and waves that can reach the height of a 4-story building. Below the surface, the ground is even harder. The seafloor is full of giant underwater volcanoes, deep holes, and sharp ridges. In some places, the water is 19,000 to almost 23,000 feet deep. Earlier searches used towed sonar tools or long cables pulled behind a ship. Because these cables were miles long, they were hard to move. If the plane crashed behind an underwater mountain, the sonar waves would bounce off of the top, leaving the area behind it hidden. It is possible the search ships passed within miles or even directly over the wreckage without ever seeing it. Another major limitation of earlier searches was the assumption about the aircraft's last moments. Many search models were built on the idea that MH370 continued on autopilot until fuel exhaustion, flying in a relatively straight line. This produced a broad search corridor, but it left little room for small deliberate changes near the end of the flight. Even a brief manual input, a shallow turn, a controlled descent, or an attempt to avoid severe weather could have shifted the crash site by tens of miles. In terrain as complex as the southern Indian Ocean seabed, that matters. The difference of just a few miles could place the wreckage behind a ridge, inside of a trench, or in a sonar blind spot that earlier equipment simply couldn't see. There were also practical limits. Ships only could operate during certain seasons, weather frequently forced pauses, and search vessels had to balance speed with coverage. In some areas, sonar scans were spaced wider than ideal to cover more ground quickly. These compromises were unavoidable at the time, but they left gaps. The current mission is designed specifically to return to those gaps, armed with better maps and far more precise tools. The 2026 search is completely different because of two big improvements: better data planning and stronger robot technology. The most exciting is the use of Weak Signal Propagation Reporter, or WSPR technology, a worldwide network of low-power radio signals used by amateur radio fans. It's like a huge invisible web of radio waves covering the Earth. When a huge metallic object like a Boeing 777 flies through these signals, it causes small but noticeable shakes, or a tripwire effect. By studying old WSPR data from the night of the disappearance, researchers have found hundreds of those shakes. By connecting those points, they've drawn a clearer flight path for MH370. This suggests the plane was not just drifting, but it was being flown in a way that avoided being seen, eventually leading to an area south of earlier search zones. Not everyone agrees on how much weight this data should carry, though. WSPR was never designed to track aircraft. It's a hobbyist radio system, not a surveillance network. The signal disturbances it records are extremely subtle. Critics argue that weather patterns, ionospheric conditions, or even unrelated aircraft could have potentially produced similar shakes. And because of that, some aviation experts warn against using WSPR as a standalone solution. They argue that it should only be used as a supporting layer of evidence, combined with satellite data, drift modeling, and radar records. Supporters counter that WSPR's strength isn't precision but volume. The signals come from thousands of transmitters spread across the globe, creating a dense web of data that didn't exist in 2014. When many independent disturbances line up along the path, they argue that it becomes statistically harder to dismiss. In this search, WSPR isn't replacing earlier evidence, it's being used to refine it, narrowing where investigators should look, not claiming to solve the mystery on its own. At this point, there are no new theories left to test, only evidence left to find. Ocean Infinity is also using a technology called swarm robotics. Instead of one sonar tool on a long cable, they send out a group of Hugin Autonomous Underwater Vehicles, or HAUVs. These drones aren't tethered to the ship, they work on their own. diving deep to the ocean floor and moving in a matching pattern. They have higher quality sonar that gives picture-like images of the seabed. Because they can fly so close to the bottom and move around obstacles, they can look into the shadows that stopped the earlier missions. These drones can process data using onboard AI, which can tell the difference between a natural rock and a man-made thing like an airplane wing with amazing accuracy. Finding the main wreckage would do more than just solve a mystery, it would provide the real truth of what happened in the cockpit, and the condition of the plane will be the first big clue. If the main body is mostly intact, it suggests a controlled landing, where someone tried to set the plane on the water. If the plane is broken into thousands of pieces scattered across many miles, it confirms a fast, straight-down dive. The most important things to recover are the 2 flight recorders. Even after 12 years, the memory inside is probably still in good condition. The flight data recorder would reveal the aircraft's exact condition, engine performance, fires, or electrical failures. The cockpit voice recorder, which only keeps the last 2 hours of sound, could capture the flight's last moments, including who was in the cockpit and what was said. Finding the plane could also stop the ideas that surround MH370 for over 10 years. It would end the guesses about the plane being stolen or taken to a hidden base or shot down. For families, this search has never really been about theories or technology. For more than a decade, they have lived without certainty. No wreckage site, no conclusive report, and no place to grieve. Many families have described the loss as an open wound, one that never healed because the question of what happened was never answered. Finding the wreckage would not undo the loss, but it would end the waiting. It would turn a disappearance into a confirmed tragedy, allowing memorials, investigations, and remembrance to finally move forward. For some families, it would allow them to have a resting place for their loved ones. For the flying industry, it would mean the chance to make new safety rules so a plane can never disappear like this again. And now the search has entered its most focused phase yet. Ocean Infinity's vessel, the Armada 8605, is operating in the southern Indian Ocean during the narrow window when conditions are the least hostile. The mission will continue only as long as weather, equipment, and operational limits allow. Rather than sweeping vast areas of ocean, the team is concentrating on a tightly defined area along the southern portion of the 7th Arc. Even without a confirmed crash point, the search is guided by drift modeling, satellite data, and newer flight path analysis. This allows investigators to prioritize the most likely locations first. And then there's the financial implications. Under the no-find, no-fee agreement, Ocean Infinity will only be paid if it locates the wreckage or the flight recorders. If nothing is found, the company absorbs the cost. It is vital they find it. If the wreckage is located, remotely operated vehicles will be deployed to visually confirm the site and document the condition of the aircraft before any recovery decisions are made. If it's not found, the operation will end. For now, the search continues in one of the most remote regions on Earth, driven by the belief that enough evidence now exists to finally locate the aircraft, and with it the end of one of aviation's most enduring mysteries. For more than a decade, the families have lived without certainty. The search for MH370 is back on. But what do we actually know after all these years? Watch Malaysian Air Mystery, What We Now Know About Missing Flight MH370 to see how the evidence finally comes together, or click on this video instead.